All right, we're going to go ahead and call our workshop together, or I'm sorry, to order. And can I start over, Chuck? We have a quorum of a whole 4 trustees present. Take us to item C, public comments. Do we have any? That is shocking. Okay, we'll go to D1. Consider approval of new administrative contract as recommended by the superintendent of schools, Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Nugent and board members. Today we're recommending Mr. Josh Ryan for the position of assistant principal at College Station High School. Mr. Ryan has 19 years teaching experience, and he joined CSISD in 2009 and is currently a 4th grade teacher at Greens Prairie. The process utilized for Mr. Ryan's selection and his recommendation here today was a 2-tiered interview process, which we use with all of our administrators. The first round of interviews were held at the campus level with Mr. Grimes and the College Station High School leadership team, which includes administration, counselors, as well as teacher leaders. They recommended Mr. Ryan as their finalist to central office. We host a second round interview that was held with myself, Mrs. Parkerson, as well as Mrs. Perry. And concluding that second round of interviews, we are recommending Mr. Ryan for the position of assistant principal at College Station High School.
Quick comment, because I wish I would have maybe said it the other night at the board meeting, just that I think, Mr. Martindale, you have a wonderful track record of not only hiring good team members, but also really we've shown you great efforts in developing your team members to be good leaders. So I have good confidence that Mr. Ryan will be a wonderful assistant principal at College Station High School. And I'll make the motion that we approve the new administrator contract as recommended.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Is there going to be any further discussion? Any comments? All right, so all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes 4-0. Takes us to, and obviously not here.
Yeah, I apologize. Mr. Ryan.
No, it's okay. No, I mean,
Mr. Grimes is here on his behalf, and I'm sure when he walks out, we'll make contact with Mr. Ryan. He had a previous commitment that we allowed him to take care of today.
So. And D2, consider approval of 2021-22 Student Code of Conduct. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Nugent. Of course, the board's required to approve the Code of Conduct on an annual basis. The Code of Conduct frames the district's behavioral expectations, our due process procedures, as well as consequences. The document's made available through the district's homepage, and of course, hard copies are available upon request, and it's also published in Spanish. The 21-22 Student Code of Conduct has no recommended local changes from last year. The 2021 Code of Conduct, the only changes captured this year are legally required changes resulting from our most recent legislative session. Those changes are minimal for a legislative year and have no real significant impact from an operational standpoint. An example would be changes or updates due to wording or changes to the Texas Penal Code. So pending any questions, of course, I have Ms. Perry and Ms. Hester, our experts with the Student Code of Conduct, available to field any specific questions. We're asking for approval as presented.
I did have a couple of questions. The big question is really a little bit of better understanding of the chain of command for kind of this document and the processes around this document. I mean, kind of even you pointing out 2 people are kind of involved with it. So, and I understand we have, you know, the campus person, but and maybe there's two sides of it, but one side, for example, might be if there is an infraction, and there's a lot of times in the document where they say they may receive this punishment. How is it determined if they do go about receiving a particular punishment? And again, how that moves up a chain of command. And then I guess the other one is kind of more the big picture chain of command, who really, besides us as a board, owns this document and kind of owns maybe more the data from, what comes out of this document. So those are kind of my two big picture questions, just to help me understand the processes around it a little bit more.
Sure. So I would say regarding the first question of chain of command and the process, that really does begin at the campus level with the administrator who is responsible for implementing that discipline. Oftentimes, that would be an assistant principal to begin with. Of course, if there's specific issues or concerns that arise, the campus principal would become involved, and they may be involved from the beginning, depending on the circumstances of the situation. Annually, Ms. Hester meets with all of our administrators to review not only the contents of the student code of conduct, but really looking at those disciplinary infractions and ensuring that our recommended discipline is consistent across campuses so that we don't have wildly varying types of conduct or consequences for the same types of conduct. However, that being said, there are considerations that administrators have to make anytime discipline is being considered for a student. For example, if a student has a disability, we have to look at how that impacts the student and the potential types of consequences, or there may need to be an ARD committee involvement in that process. And so there is some variance, but that's individualized and really through those considerations that we have around the circumstances such as intent or disability. In circumstances where there are questions or concerns or appeals, that would then potentially move towards that more formal grievance process, where it would again begin at the campus level and then move to central office and ultimately could, of course, go to the board should there be a level 3 appeal. Around the second question related to who owns the document, we, as part of our consulting services with the Texas Association of School Boards, do look at the document that they provide as a sample, and what you have for consideration today does come from the TASB model. However, we make adjustments based on our local needs and not, of course, changing definitions to legal consequences for different types of conduct, but just local specific needs. The board does annually approve, as Mr. Martindale said at the beginning, and so ultimately it is a board-approved document on an annual basis that we here in College Station ISD, along with other districts across the state, would adopt.
All right, thank you. So you say, so it's, and as far as kind of reviewing the data and cross comparisons, you said that's...
Yes, thank you. So all of the data for disciplinary infractions is entered into our student information system, which ultimately is uploaded into the PEIMS system, or that state level data system. So anytime an infraction results in discipline, not only is it coded in terms of the type of infraction, but what discipline is incurred as a result. So if a student receives in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension or placement at the DAP, all of those things are coded into PEIMS so that we can not only monitor that internally, but so that that information is reported to the state.
Okay. So I guess a couple makes me want to follow up a couple on that then. If that can stay with a student all the way through, if it's uploaded into a state system all the way through graduation?
That's correct.
That's correct. And then when you say, so the data's there to review, what is our internal systems for really reviewing that data, again, either at a campus or district level?
So we do have systems in place where we can look at the different types of discipline that are incurred at the campus level, and then we can actually disaggregate that by student groups as well. For example, an area that is often looked at and monitored at the state and federal level is the types of discipline incurred for students with disabilities. And so our special education director on a monthly basis is looking at that information and having conversations with campus principals to ensure that we're equitable in our disciplinary practices.
Just clarify a little bit. I mean, we can review it, but is there like a regular time throughout the year that data is really, we've got on a schedule to sit down and review disciplinary data from the district? And, how?
So we have those monthly processes that I mentioned in place for special education in particular, but I know Ms. Hester's looking at that data, and part of that annual process of really looking at all of our different aspects of the discipline chart are I think something that they're also looking at as well.
More with, really, Christie, okay. Okay, that's kind of what I wanted to have a better feel for, how that's being utilized, I mean, and kind of the process and how the data's being looked at and utilized.
Of course, we submit the discipline data through PEAMS, as Ms. Perry just mentioned, and we review that on an annual basis. And we can segregate that data down to student groups, to campuses, to grade levels, whatever the case may be. And we do that annually, in particular, Mrs. Hester. And it does give us an indication, or it provides us insight. Yes.
Things are, if there's major trends or changes.
If there are conversations that need to be had, yes, or processes that need to be reviewed.
And I would add that the state does have a monitoring system in place called data validation monitoring, where when there are abnormalities or things of concern in the data, they would actually provide some feedback to campuses and districts about that, and we have not had any of those in the recent past.
I guess I'll ask just one very specific, just because this stood out in the, I mean, maybe we can take it offline from you. When is the last time we've had an expulsion from school? Do we all know? Do you know? I mean, just generally, in the last year, in the last
year because
of a gun, right? Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Nugent, I move to approve as presented.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Without any, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, motion passes 4-0. And that is the end of our agenda, so we are adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.